Back in March in Chicago, Illinois, at 7147 West Archer Avenue, a pothole was reported. This particular pothole was the 1 millionth pothole publicly documented by a citizen or government official on SeeClickFix. This particular pothole stood at the end of a long line of issues reported all over the world by citizens looking to make small iterative improvements in their communities. From abandoned furniture in Oakland, California, to illegal dumping, to graffiti and blight in New Haven, Connecticut, to cycling safety requests in Gdynia, Poland. 2 weeks later, the City of Chicago's Public Works Department came out and fixed the pothole. This pothole became one of 800,000 issues publicly documented that have also been resolved. Now, traditionally, that might have just meant a smoother street for a few Chicagoans. But with some deliberate design decisions at SeeClickFix and the ability to use open data and social connectivity via the web, the feedback loops that are created from resolving things like this small pothole in Chicago are much bigger. So for a city who comes to the table and starts deciding that they're going to respond publicly to citizens, the immediate value, the perceived value is that they'll save money by taking what was traditionally a phone call and putting it on the web. What they see in the long run is a more resilient and sustainable community. For citizens, the first time they come to the platform, they come because they're frustrated. They want a place to vent. And the second time they come to the platform, they're coming to help because they understand that the place that they came the first time actually gets things done. But in the long run, what they really get is a sense of ownership for their community. And it's specifically that sense of ownership that I want to focus on today, because in what's becoming a relatively large data set, there's some really beautiful anecdotes that have started as edge cases and at some level in some communities have started to become the norm. And that really excites me. I'd like to show these today because I'd like us all to think about how we can find these edge cases in the data and optimize them, because it is our job to save the internet. So it's 4 years ago and we're in Corona, California, and a recently divorced mother of 4 children has moved to Corona and purchased a home because, quite frankly, that's about the only place she can afford to buy, this particular neighborhood. And when she buys the home, she believes that it will be a good and safe place to live. But soon after she moves in, she's met with a much different story, particularly in the back alley of the home, where it is obvious that there is drug dealing from the shoes that are hanging from the telephone wires, that there are unsecured properties that she cannot, that are too dangerous to let her children out of their own property, that there's a dog down the street that's barking all night because it's in inhumane conditions. And she started to feel really helpless until she saw an advertisement on the City of Corona's Facebook page encouraging her to download this application that would help her document these types of issues. And despite being skeptical, she did, and one by one, she started to report the unsecured property, the drug dealing, the blight, the animal that was in inhumane conditions, and one by one, remarkably, things started to change. And even more remarkably, she started to notice that on other blocks, there were other citizens who were also reporting things, and they clearly cared about this neighborhood, which only days before she had felt so isolated in. In the end, she got a more beautiful community, but she also got connected to these neighbors whose issues she was commenting on, voting on, and really, truly connecting with, even though she was doing this almost entirely anonymously. I talked to her about 3 months ago, and she told me that this application, this connection to City Hall and her neighborhood, is the only reason that she stayed in Corona and calls it her home today and enjoys calling it her home. We have seen this all over the world. This is not an unusual story anymore, and it's really powerful. It's the little things that create this feedback loop that is so strong that makes people take real ownership. In Boston, Massachusetts, a few years ago, we saw, after one of the large snowstorms in the Northeast, a different type of issue start to pop up on the map. We saw issues from elderly and disabled citizens who were asking for help to shovel out their driveways and to get them out of their houses from complete strangers. We found out that this was encouraged by the work of a man who was working in the Boston Police Department at the time, a man named Joseph Percelli. And Joseph had also organized what he, at the time, called the Snow Crew. And this was a group of neighbors who were going out in Jamaica Plains and actually helping to shovel out. So you can imagine how surprised we were when we started to see that these issues were getting fixed. This was one of those moments where we said, the platform is working different than we expected, and we can't let this just slip by. So we worked with Joseph over the last winter to build a platform called Snow Crew on top of SeeClickFix. And as a result, hundreds, thousands of what we called Yetis signed up to help volunteer, and hundreds of people were shoveled out. I think this is probably the most remarkable case. There was a woman who posted that her due date was yesterday, and she was nervous that she was going to deliver her baby. I actually went on and I said, you should call 911 if you think that you're in labor. And she came back and she said, no, I'm not, I don't think I'm in labor. I, by the way, had those same words from my wife in my head when she clearly was in labor and knew that maybe that wasn't true. But she came back and she said, no, I think I'm okay. And then something really great happened. 2 other citizens came on and commented that they would try to help find someone to plow the street, because it was the entire street that was unplowed. And within 45 minutes, she came back with this photo of the street being plowed. It turns out that one of those individuals knew the fire chief, called the fire chief. The fire chief happened to be on the road right next door and would have totally not known that this was needed to be plowed. He was just going out for emergencies. He was in a bucket loader, and her street was plowed. She was absolutely in labor. That photo came the next morning. And this baby was born in the hospital. Now, you can have a home birth, but if you're not preparing for one, that is a scary thing. And just really remarkable. Tears in my eyes when I saw this photo posted the next morning, because this is the kind of thing we need to optimize for. Similarly, in Boston, Massachusetts, while the Boston Police Department, the municipality, were out looking for a terrorist who had just attacked the Boston Marathon, an impromptu, ad hoc tourism bureau showed up on SeeClickFix, and 750 citizens posted that their homes were publicly available and open to anybody who was trapped and could not get to a mode of transportation. Now, that is something we would never expect. I'm not sure we deliberately optimize for that, but it's really beautiful when it happens. I live in New Haven, Connecticut. When I come to conferences like this, people ask me why, or they think I go to Yale. I don't, I didn't, and the why is because I get to look through this really beautiful lens, this platform of neighbors that clearly want to make the place where we live a better place. This particular animal is well documented in Mika's book. And I'll just tell you quickly the story. He was left abandoned outside an apartment building. People believe that it might have been because he was living with a homeless person who couldn't take care of him anymore. Someone by the name of Mabel X came on SeeClickFix and posted this photo and said, I think this dog has been left abandoned. Can anybody help? A woman came on and said, yeah, I'll run outside right now. I'm home from work, and I will bring it water. Another person said, yeah, I will call the animal shelter. And then the alderman came on and said, the city councilman said, can I help in any way? And then the police sergeant came on and said, if you need any help getting him to the animal shelter, we can help. A couple hours later, Mabel X comes back on and says the animal shelter came and picked up the dog. Dog is taken away. A few weeks later, an issue opens again. The dog is back on the street, and it appears that the dog was actually the dog of a homeless person. Well, the issue gets reopened. And there's a conversation about whether it was appropriate to take the dog from the street, because this was the dog of this homeless person. And in the end, they resolve that, yeah, it was, and the animal shelter comes and picks up the dog again because this person clearly is not taking care of it. A conversation ensues where accusations start to flow about the, about the animal shelter, and that it might be a kill shelter, that they might not take care of the animals, that maybe the homeless person would take care of them better. And you could see how this would start to digress into some internet rant that would probably end in Hitler. But it didn't. What ended up happening is Officer Stephanie Johnson of the New Haven Animal Shelter came on and wrote a 3-paragraph response explaining that they are not a kill shelter, and the animal is being taken care of, that it was unhealthy. And after that, about 15 users hit a thank you button on the website, because we believe that if you're going to be really disruptive and change the world, you should be polite about it. It's just really phenomenal. And I had a few more slides in my deck, and last night I read part of Mika's book, the part that we're in, and I read this story, and he's done a phenomenal amount of research interviewing the users who were involved in this. And what I thought was so cool, the thing that was really interesting is, and this is where I'll end, is what would have happened in the 5 years ago? How would this have gone down? And the way this would have gone down is hopefully someone would have called, right? Hopefully the animal would not have starved out there. And they would have called 911, and the police, the animal shelter would have come. And that would be the end of the story. So what wouldn't have happened is that the 2,000 people who viewed the issue would not know the truth about the New Haven Animal Shelter. They wouldn't know that they had a city councilman that really cared. They wouldn't know that they had a police sergeant that really cared. And most importantly, they wouldn't have known about the 3 neighbors that actually helped this dog themselves. That is a phenomenally powerful change. And that's the kind of change that I believe we need to all optimize for. So I greatly appreciate you guys having me here today. I really appreciate Andrew and Mika for putting this together. PDF is a wonderful experience. Thank you.